All right, let's get into it. We're going to pull back the curtain on the global economy. We're talking about that huge invisible system that brings pretty much everything we use every single day right to our front door.
I mean, just look at the phone in your hand. You know it wasn't just stamped out in one factory in one country, right? It was born from this incredible network of ideas, tiny components, and different tasks that literally stretch across the entire globe. But how does that network actually work? And maybe more importantly, who's really calling the shots?
Okay, so to really get this, we need to clear up one thing that people mix up all the time: the supply chain versus the value chain. A supply chain, that's just logistics. It's about getting paint tubes from the factory to an artist's studio, point A to point B. But a value chain, well, that's the art itself. It's the whole creative journey, from that first spark of an idea to the design to the final branding that makes you want it. It's how you turn a blank canvas into a masterpiece.
And when you take that whole creative process and you stretch it across the entire planet, you get what we call a global value chain, or a GVC. So the research might be happening in California, the parts produced in South Korea, and the final marketing campaign run out of London. It's a truly worldwide collaboration.
And here is the absolute key to understanding the modern world. Globalization today isn't about shipping finished products back and forth, like the old days of England trading cloth for Portugal's wine. No, it's about breaking up the production line itself. We're not trading finished goods anymore. We are trading individual tasks.
So that brings us to the big question, right? If the global economy is really just this massive, sprawling collection of tasks, who's the orchestra conductor? Who's actually in control of it all?
Well, it turns out the control exists on a spectrum. There are basically 5 main ways these global networks are managed, and they range from super loose, price-driven deals all the way to complete, tight-fisted ownership. It really all boils down to 2 things: how much coordination is needed, and, you guessed it, who holds all the power.
Let's start over on the low control end of things. First, you've got market relationships. This is as simple as it gets. It's all about price. Think about buying a standard screw or a basic computer chip off the shelf. Next up is modular. This is a little more involved, kind of like a plug-and-play system. A lead company gives a supplier really detailed specs, and that supplier builds a whole complex piece, like the entire engine for a car.
Right in the middle, you find what are called relational models. Now, these are not simple transactions at all. They're these complex partnerships that are built on years of deep trust, on reputation, and on a constant back and forth of knowledge. In this setup, the big firm and the supplier are really dependent on each other.
But as we move to the high control end, the power balance shifts dramatically. In a captive relationship, the lead firm is basically a king. It dictates every single term to a small, totally dependent supplier. It's like being a court painter who isn't allowed to work for anyone else. And then finally, you have hierarchy. This is total, absolute control. The lead firm just owns the entire operation from top to bottom. There are no partners here, just employees. And this quote just nails why all this matters so much. In today's economy, just physically making stuff is often the least valuable part of the whole process. The real money and the real power, it lies in being the one who orchestrates the entire global chain.
So, companies build these incredibly intricate, finely tuned global machines. But what happens when some outside force comes along and just throws a giant wrench in the works? How do they adapt?
Turns out, external shocks, especially things like new trade policies, are the biggest drivers of change. A government can suddenly put up a wall, like a tariff, or open a brand new door with a trade agreement. These actions force companies to react. They can't just sit there. They are active players in this game who have to adapt to survive.
And it becomes this really clear cause and effect loop. First, there's a disruption, say a huge new tariff. That forces a strategic action. A firm might have to scramble to find a new supplier or invest in new tech to get around it. And the final result? A complete reconfiguration of the entire global value chain.
And that reconfiguration can look really different, depending on the strategy. A company might decide to spread its operations all over the world to minimize risk. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Or it could go the other way and cluster all its suppliers in one region to be as efficient as possible.
So, if you're a supplier caught up in this massive global game, just reacting isn't enough. How do you go from being just a pawn on the board to becoming a queen? How do you escape that low-value trap?
Well, this is the challenge, and it's captured perfectly by what's called the smile curve. See, the highest value in any chain is usually found way at the beginning, in R&D and design, and way at the end, in branding and services. The actual physical work of manufacturing and assembly, that stuff is stuck down in the low-value bottom of the curve. And that is the trap.
But there is a way out, and this is it. The upgrading ladder. It shows the 4 main paths that firms and even entire countries can take to climb up and capture more of that value. You can upgrade your processes to become more efficient, upgrade your products to make more complex things, take on whole new functions like design, or even make a huge leap to a totally new industry chain.
And hey, this isn't just theory. Just look at the Chinese company Haier. They started out as a simple contract manufacturer making fridges for other brands, but by systematically climbing that upgrading ladder, step by step, they eventually grew so powerful that they acquired the entire appliance division of General Electric, one of their original big bosses. Talk about a brand conquest.
And that brings us right to today, where these huge forces of disruption and these clever strategies of upgrading are playing out in real time, with enormous consequences for all of us.
Let's just make this super real for a second. At one point, the tariff wall the United States put up on imports from Vietnam was a staggering 46%. For Cambodia, it was 49%. Can you just imagine the incredible pressure that puts on a company? You'd have to rethink your entire global operation, practically overnight. So, as these powerful forces keep reshaping our world, companies have absolutely no choice but to respond. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. In this wild, ever-changing global gallery, which of these strategies of adaptation and upgrading will end up being hailed as masterpieces, and which ones will just become cautionary tales?